Hello, 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 and welcome to the Amanda Kaufman Show. We are so stoked to have you listening today. If I sound a little bit unfamiliar, it's because you are on the ball. My name is actually Rebecca, and I am coming in to co-host with Miss Amanda. Hello.
Hello, I'm so glad you're here.
I am too. This is going to be so much fun. So, we had the idea that when it comes to Amanda, spreading her wisdom and giving you guys all the good information, it might be helpful to have someone to interview her for a change. So, we're going to try this out. Let us know how you like it in the ratings and, in the reviews. If you hate it, let us know that too. It's all helpful. But yeah, we're just going to start this thing off. You ready?
I'm ready. Born ready.
Okay, amazing. Well, Amanda, when it comes to your person that you are helping, first off, can you just give us a little bit of a description of who that person even is?
Yeah, so I'm usually working with an entrepreneur who's pretty successful already in terms of having made sales. They might have kissed six figures or they're getting really close to six figures in a service business. I like working with coaches, consultants, agency owners, service providers, people who help people for a living, and especially people who help people use it and are using like a consult to close. I love helping those folks because you probably have a premium service and you probably are doing something that's pretty impactful, which justifies the premium price. And so that's usually the person I'm working with, somebody who maybe they built mainly through networking and referral base and they're moving online. And you're just kind of feeling like you should be getting more enrollments by now, right? Given your effort, given the time, given the money, given the different strategies you've tried and the amount of energy you've put into it. I love helping that person to gain clarity so that they can do less and earn more.
Do less, earn more. That sounds like something everyone would be kind of down for at this stage. Okay, that makes sense. And so,
Mhm.
when you are helping people out these days, what's the thing that's coming up for your clients and for your person this week?
So, what I'm noticing is coming up, especially in the last 12 months, is a lot of conversation around, hey, what used to work doesn't work. So, for example, maybe you did webinars before and they worked and now it's not working. Or maybe you were doing local networking and hosting events and that's not working. So, I'm hearing a lot of entrepreneurs who formerly had success and the old tricks aren't working anymore. Yeah.
Okay. And from your, vantage point, what would you say is the number one reason? Is it just that the methods are outdated? Is it something to do with their messaging? What's the diagnosis, or is it pretty niche for each person?
There are some universal things that I'm hearing. And the first thing I think is actually misdiagnosis. So what I mean by that is people are noticing like, hey, the webinars aren't working, my email marketing's not working, nobody's booking the calls after my speeches. Like people are noticing that data and that trend. And then what they're doing is they're attributing the cause to factors that are way outside of their control. So it's like, oh, well, it's because AI came out, or it's because of the economic climate, or it's because of what's happening in politics. And so I'm seeing a lot of readiness to explain this with, honestly, what's really tricky about it is there things that are true. It's true. AI
Yeah.
is here. It is disrupting everything. Right? It's true. The economy is what it is and the politics are what they are. Like all of that stuff is true. And I think like when people are looking for like more firm certainty in their business, they're pointing at these things that are true. But the problem is that it's assigning the control or the agency to things that are outside of the business owner's control and agency. So what I'm noticing is because of that misdiagnosis, then the prescription becomes work harder, right? So it's like go to more events, hustle more, do another social media channel, open a Substack. That's huge right now, right? So like people are adding new strategies on top of a foundation that was a little rickety to begin with. So I think it's like misdiagnosis and then of course like the wrong prescription for the wrong problem. And what I think is usually happening. So yes, like is it a niche specific problem? Like is everybody a snowflake? Yes, your business is unique. You are completely unique and you are so, 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 so special. But also there are some things that I notice that if we just address these, it really unlocks the next level. So one of those things is just checking in on like did that strategy work so good in the first place? So, for example, let's say you've been doing speaking and you're used to people signing up with you really quickly after the speech. And now lately you're finding fewer people are opting in, fewer people are willing to have the conversation, and fewer still are saying yes. And the ones that are saying yes, they're taking like 3 or 4 times longer to convince to say yes than ever. So I think one thing is a lot of these business owners, they're anecdotally referencing their their result, right? They're saying it's 4 times longer, or it's taking twice as long, or it's half as much. And the truth is they don't actually have any metrics in their business. So they don't know for sure exactly how many people were in the room, exactly how many people were converting, and exactly what has changed and what is different. They're
Okay.
speculating, and because they're in an emotional state, they're like, "It's worse than it's ever been before." And it's like, "Well, maybe it was actually kind of bad before, you just didn't have the," you know?
And so let me just like translate that for a hot second. So essentially, the business isn't performing, or it doesn't feel like it's performing the way that it used to, or it's not growing at the same trajectory, right?
Mhm.
And so people are, externalizing why that could be happening, just blaming it on, the state of the politics, the state of the economy, and like, Lord knows, like the price of eggs these days, my God. But what you're saying is that actually they don't have like accurate kind of analysis of their business beforehand. So they don't really
Mhm.
have any way of really doing a fair comparison. Is that right?
So, like, think about it this way. So, this is the metaphor that just came into my brain is imagine you've broken up with a guy, right? And I think we've all had a relationship. We have the breakup, right? What do we do right after the breakup? When things got bad enough that we had to break up, we basically look at the entire relationship and we're like, the whole thing was terrible. And that's an example of what I'm saying is like sometimes, depending on the story we want to tell in our mind, we see the data differently, right? And like before the breakup, you wouldn't look at the whole relationship as being off. At the breakup, you're like, wait, the whole thing didn't work, right? I think the same kind of thing happens when people are talking about their business. Like, number one, if you've got good metrics in place, you're going to see some of the indications that things are off track way before it's an emergency. Like way before it's an emergency. But because we don't have those metrics in place, when people usually realize it, unfortunately, is when their bank account is just screaming, or the amount of credit that they've got and trying to keep up with paying the credit back starts to really become painful. And at that point, I'm not saying it's too late, but I'm just saying it's like it's kind of late. So then what ends up happening is there's a lot of guilt and shame that comes with that. And so then when we look back on the past, it kind of taints things. It's like, well, it used to be so good. It used to be so working. It used to be this. And I'm saying, like, do you know that for sure? Like, do you have the data that says exactly that? Because the story sounds really good of it used to be good. It just got really hard. And then I worked really hard to try to fix the hard thing. And now here we are. And like, I know that story because I've lived that story personally, but I also know that story because I've worked with so many business owners that are telling me something pretty similar. And what's so interesting is when you start looking at the data, like you look in their CRMs, you look at the transaction data, and you check the facts of the story, so often what sounds like it was so stable and performing so well in the past, it was actually kind of a one-hit wonder. It wasn't a
Um,
sustained performance, or it didn't, maybe you had that one sale that was really rocking, but then everything after that, there was a little compromise in it. And because of that, I think that the story then becomes it's out of my control and I can't do anything about it. And that's where people get stuck.
So here's a question for you, because like I already kind of know the answer to this, because working in sales, metrics is like massive, but they're also the thing that any sales manager will have to pull teeth to get people to accurately do on a consistent basis.
Mhm.
Why the resistance to metrics? And if you had to recommend like a BAM, bare ass minimum level of metrics that you record, like what would you say to that newbie entrepreneur?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say to like both the newbie and also the more established entrepreneur who is encountering a ceiling. Like stuck is stuck. Like if you're stuck at $250,000, it can feel exactly the same as stuck as zero. Like stuck is stuck. So if you're stuck, it's because we're not taking the actions that are going to affect the outcomes that you're looking for. That's it. That's all it is. Like in some ways, business is incredibly simple. The issue is that we think it's not. We think that we have to have viral posts that are going out. And we have to be famous. And we have to have a New York Times bestselling book. And we have to be on all the different news feeds. And we have to. And if you're drowning in all these have-tos become gonnas, like I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, right? And what ends up happening is we make more promises about what we're gonna do or how the future is gonna be different than what it is today, and we skip over the things that you know but really, really have to do. So getting back to your point about the bare ass minimum, the BAM is what we call it around here, of metrics, I would say number one, as a business owner, you must track your time. And like, when I say must, and I know that was so dramatic how I dropped that, but most entrepreneurs are so living in reaction to their inboxes, to social media, to opportunities. And they're just like, that pinball game where it's like ping, 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 ping. And so they're operating like the Tasmanian dang devil. And they're trying to figure out, like, how come I don't have a predictable business? And it's like, because you are behaving erratically, right? So the first thing is to pull it in with one calendar, not six, but one calendar that describes what is happening with your focus, right? So right now, I am with you, Rebecca. I am not coaching somebody else. I am not in my car driving somewhere. I tried to speak to a lead today, and like she was juggling 1,000 things at once. We had to reschedule the call. I think the average entrepreneur is so chaotic because they don't have visibility to how they are spending their time. And if you don't have visibility to that, then you won't have the power to make a new decision. I think the second big piece, getting back to like business metrics, is every business is going to have a different set of activities that they perform in order to generate more revenue. So like for me, it's going to be content, right? So I can measure how many posts am I posting on a given platform. I can measure how many minutes I'm putting onto the YouTubes, right? I can measure how many podcast interviews I'm booking. I can measure all of these input things, and as part of my process, it goes content into middle funnel, into lower funnel. And in the lower funnel, that's where the conversion conversations are happening. I can measure activities all the way along the way. So I would say like your input activities to whatever it is you're doing for visibility and exposure. So if you're doing networking, it's like, how many networking events did you go to this week? Simple, right? It doesn't have to be crazy. So those are like the inputs. Then you need to have your outputs. So I think one of the biggest mistakes I made for years, and that lots of business owners do, is they look at their bank account at the end of the day and then they say, am I successful or not? And they're looking for like this magic number that has enough zeros that they're finally going to feel good about themselves. And that day never comes. And then they're like, what? I'm working hard as hell. And like, I'm not getting the traction that I want. And the reason is that you're looking at this end of the day metric that is so deep into your business activities, and we don't have any visibility in between. So I would say number of calls that you're getting booked at the beginning of your sales process, the number of yeses, and tracking like the financials, all of that is good. But if I was to just do like the three big things, it's my time, it's the number of input activities, number of meetings that are getting booked in the case of a consult business, and then, of course, the number of yeses and the magnitude of those yeses. So meaning, translation for myself, magnitude being how much are they paying you, right? So we want to actually track what's the total contract, for revenue. And we also want to track the cash that was collected.
Amen to that. That sounds right on my end. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're starting to track these metrics. You might be discovering some things that were a little bit less stable in your business that you weren't as aware of in the beginning days. Fair. What now?
Yeah, I mean, once you have the metrics, you're empowered to start asking questions about what's going on, right? So if we start with, for example, your time, what is the purpose of every block of every hour that you allocated in your business? What was the intent of that time? So for example, like let's just say I've got a good chunk of time booked for the next day or so around content for the next few weeks, right? So when I look back on that block, what did I do towards content? And so I kind of think of it kind of like a action, track, review, adjust cycle, right? So first I've blocked the time to do the content. I'm going to do a thing in that time. When I was a newer entrepreneur, it looked a lot like scrolling, right? It looked like a lot like watching what other people are doing. And hey, you got to start somewhere, and that is a place to learn. And if you want to get damn good, you probably have to do a bit of scrolling to just stay on, what is new in content. I totally get that. But we don't expand into the 8 hours to fill that time, right? We're doing it very discreetly. We're taking our notes and then we are moving on. But you're going to be doing action that's going to produce a result that whole time. So just track, like, what did I do? How many, how much? And then what was my expected outcome from that? So when we're recalibrating, we can ask the question. It's like, hey, okay, so I've already committed that I'm going to make the investment of, say, 8 hours a month into my content. Now I'm empowered to make different decisions about what I'm doing inside of the 8 hours to affect more of a result. So, for example, when I was examining my content strategy, I was like, dang, I keep sitting down, opening up a recording to do a solo episode, and I'm getting stuck and I'm getting drained. And I let myself do that like half a dozen times. And then I was like, I need a solution for this. So I used some of my time to say, well, what can I do to help me finish? And one of the ideas was to invite a host to ask me questions so that I would have more accountability in the conversation so the conversation would conclude. So that's the reason Rebecca's here, and it's going pretty great so far. And like we could iterate from here as well. So like when I think about the
Awesome.
game of business, it really is like examining your time and the money that goes with that too, of course, but really examining, like, is there a way that I can make one move that makes everything else downstream easier? And the strategy of focusing on this is this particular video, this very one that we're watching, can become short form content, can be transcript content that can be re-engineered into caption content, you name it. I can create a huge ton of content by fixing this one bottleneck.
Well, and I think the thing that like really strikes me about that example is that like you're taking time out of the doing in your business to really analyze like the why you're doing things in the first place, which I think can be really tough for someone who's in the thick of it, where you feel like you're just hopping from thing to thing to thing to thing, like you were saying, and like intentionally taking that time to like actually assess like what is going to be the needle mover here? What do I actually need to adjust to get this better result that I'm after?
It is so easy, especially in today's society, to become very reactionary. And I'm not even talking about your attitude being reactionary, although that's also a thing, but I just mean your to-do list. It's so easy to have the marketers fill it up, your family fill it up, your friends fill it up, and it's all well intended and well meaning. And I really believe like if you have something bigger to do, like you have a vision and of your purpose and the impact that you really want to have, it is so important that you get real about how you are using your time and money and to be more intentional. So then when things aren't working, which things don't work 99% of the time, then you're empowered to say, well, like if I was to make a change, what would I change? And then test it and then try that and then just keep going. You owe it to your dreams.
1,000%. 1,000%. Okay. So I think to kind of wrap up this episode, when you're talking to that entrepreneur who finds themselves in that space of just being stuck, whether that's their first $100,000 that they're ever making, or they're on their like fifth million, like wherever they are on that spectrum, like what's your like biggest takeaway that you hope someone takes from this episode?
Yeah. So stuck is stuck, like we said. So the thing I didn't say that I want to also say is that shame doesn't really get you too far, right? So feeling shame about being stuck, feeling guilty about the decisions you made that led you to being stuck, like all of that, generally a useless emotion, except to tell you that something has to change. Right. So once you acknowledge that change, it really is like, it's so surprising when you do pop the hood on your own business, how much data you can actually extract from your business right now today without buying another software, without hiring a data scientist, without doing all this crazy stuff. And especially now that you've got like AI and Claude, you can like grab extracts of kind of downloads of CSV files and things like that, like data exports, and you can pop them into a folder with Claude Cowork, and you can tell Claude, like, let's go to work, let's build some dashboards, let's do a review of our history, and ask really powerful questions. So if you've been stuck, I think some of the questions might be like, how much has our most revenue generating client paid us, and what did they buy? Powerful, right? You could analyze transcripts from your sales conversation. Again, you can use AI to help you. But you can grab those transcripts and you can ask, like, what were the motivating reasons that people decided to say yes, or what were the reasons that people gave that they said no? You can use all that data and synthesize it to gain insights that give you ideas about what to do about the bottleneck. I think one of the third big thing I'll say is stop looking for an easy answer to a hard problem. So if it was easy peasy, breezy, beautiful to solve, then you wouldn't be listening to me right now. So I think like permission for it to be hard and permission for you to not already have the answer, and therefore the permission to seek from, again, like that introspection of the data, but also read more books, ask for more help, get into more community with people who've solved problems like this. Like, where there's a will, there is a way, and somebody has solved it. So that's my 3-1 thing.
I love it. I love it. But honestly, I think that is golden. And if your mind was just like a little bit blown by the different questions that Amanda was asking or the applications of the AI, you are not alone. Just as someone who is not data brained as much as all that, like if you don't have that innately, and you don't shame yourself on that either, like she said, get the help. Like quite literally just getting a different perspective on your business, just like having someone be able to be removed from the business can be massive. So yeah, I think I just wanted to lay that out there because you lay it out like it's so easy to think of those questions, but I'm like, I wouldn't have done that.
Well, okay, and like to be fair, I didn't know how to do any of these things either until somebody taught me. So, like I was with a client earlier today, and she was feeling bad about not being organized. She was feeling, like the overwhelm and, just, yeah, let's put it this way. She had a system that worked for her in a different context that when she goes to do it in business, it doesn't work. She ends up being the Tasmanian devil. And she was feeling really, really bad about it. And I said to her, I'm like, I did not come out of the womb organized. Right? Like I had to learn that it was an issue. I had to learn my options for solving that problem. I had to practice with a couple of different solutions. And even then, like Rebecca's smirking right now because she knows that in some ways I'm hella organized and in other ways I am also a Tasmanian devil.
It's all a spectrum,
It just depends on what, and I love business, so pretty organized in business, but
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, guys, I think we're going to wrap it up there. I hope you guys got a lot out of this episode. If you have any follow-up questions or things that you want to hear Amanda's like opinions on, if she has any knowledge that you want to pick her brain about, leave us a question in the reviews as well. We do keep a pretty close eye on those. So if you have anything, bring it to the pod. We would love to kind of hash it out for you and see if we can get some things answered.
I love it. Great job on your first interview.
Huzzah.